glad you're here to listen to wonderful program coming to you. And please don't forget to subscribe or give us thumbs up. Yeah, welcome to another episode of a program. Welcome, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, we want to talk about the legacy of the outgoing Iebc commissioner, Wafula Chebukati. You know, Kenya has evolved with the history of elections, which I think you remember very well. We had Jesoni. They say he was the only man who left smiling. I don't know why. He was leading the Kenya's what we used to call ECK, Electoral Commission. And then after that, I think we evolved. We had Samuel Kivuitu, who led the Electoral Commission during the multi-party, I think in 97 and the 202 elections. And then I think it was 208 or 209, there was an interim independent electoral boundaries commission, which was run by Hassan, which actually prepared the way for independent electoral boundaries commission, which has been run by Chebukati. I would think that is the precise history of where we are as a country. With that history that we have traveled far. So what can you say about the history first of how we evolved as a country in matters of management of elections?
Yeah, thank you so much again for inviting me. I think we can even go a little bit further behind and back to the history, further than you pointed out to the year 2002, and look at what used to happen in the 70s, in the 80s, and in the 90s. So that because it really informs people about how far we have come to even the year 2002. Remember, we had a de jure multi-party, a single party system since 1982. We did have multi-party in quotes in the 60s and early 70s to 1982, until when the coup came in. That's when they completely made it a single party system, where we had an electoral commission, which was really not an electoral commission, which was a stamp of the executive at the time.
Was it really was it a commission? I thought it was a government
it was actually a commission, because I remember 1988, prior to the elections of 1988, the chairman, the two previous chairmen were actually from Kisii. One was the late minister for Reba, James Nyamweya, who was the chairman of the Boundaries Commission, and he was responsible for demarcations of the new boundaries of constituencies. And I remember he was barred from running in 1988 because it was so said that he carved a constituency for himself. And prior to that, there was another Kisii man who was actually a chairman of that. If you remember very well, I'm trying to remember his name. Nyarango was, yes, Zachary Nyarango.
It was a supervisor of elections.
That's how they used to call them. Anyway, that's how far we have evolved, because they were responsible for the boundaries and demarcations of the constituencies. And they were also national returning officers, even if there were any some elections. Actually, they were returning officers at the time. So the really elections started in the year 1992, when we had the first multi-party elections. And you remember all too well what happened there, when there was a split of the original Ford, and Matiba came number 2. So those were very competitive elections, and anybody who was actually supervising those elections, they were very tough elections to supervise.
Yeah, it was.
So given that context, therefore, we can come to the year 2002 when Chesoni, then I think he was the supervisor at the time,
Yeah.
he was able to midwife the first really multi-party elections when Kanu was trounced out of power. Were there complaints? Absolutely, there were complaints. What really became a straw on the back of his legacy was how he managed the elections of the year 2007, if you remember clearly. He was unable to even tell who won the elections, and he confessed that I don't know who won because he completely lost control. He completely lost control, and he left in a bad way. And you all know that when it came to pass, he died in a very bad way, and he a miserable man.
Yeah.
So his legacy was written and by one sentence: I don't know who won.
I don't know what. Okay. Well, I think that's a brief of where Kenya's come, and now we have Chairman Wafula Chebukati, who retired this week, plus other commissioners. Technically, we don't have any person remaining. Of course, it was intended other commissioners could have been there, and you understand what happened to Cherera for, so they decided to resign. Now, what legacy, in your opinion, how would you judge Wafula Chebukati as for the 6 years he has led the commission? He has overseen 2 elections and 3 presidential elections. There was a runoff which you can count to him. What can you say about Wafula Chebukati?
Arenas really is seen clearly maybe 20 years down the road around after somebody has left office. But the immediate legacy that we can talk about is what he did in the year 2013, being the really fast multi-party elections under the new constitution. And he did very well. I mean, look at the climate. Let's put this context here. Politics is very competitive.
Yeah.
And people who go running for office in a political office, more specifically, they have big egos. They don't see how they can lose.
Yeah.
So wherever way you are going to conduct those elections, there is going to be accusing fingers pointed against you. They will say you rigged these elections. You were part of the cahoots, regardless of whether the person fairly lost or unfairly lost. So let's look at it from that context.
Okay.
So in the year 2013, we all know what happened. And however, he was new in the office at the time, and he actually was given a benefit of the doubt. Now, 2017, though, which would be part of his legacy, is when there was a nullification of that election.
Yeah.
The first one in Africa. So once history is written, his name will be a footnote there, that even though the sitting president, this election was nullified, he will be mentioned as a person who conducted an election that was a sham. So that will, whether he likes it or not, that will be part of his legacy.
Well, I mean, it's good. Ben came in. There is something here. I
hiding for 3 days after the results were declared at
my country.
A very contented man, and I say we gave it our best.
I am satisfied that I did my best for my country and my people. And as I leave, I have no apologies to make to anybody.
Vet commissioners, please ensure the commission is not populated by political stooges. This is a national commission. It is not a place for political rewards. Please take political reward elsewhere.
Now, you have listened. This enter Ben. Ben is entering. Hi, welcome Ben.
Thank you, Dr. and thank you, Mr. Ndimu.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in the process of discussion about what legacy of the outgoing IBC chairman has left. And I was asking him, I hope you saw the clip where he's saying that he's going home with no regrets. He has upbeat that he has done a good job. What do you have to say about that?
As Penn gets his thoughts organized, maybe are you asking me or Penn?
Oh, I was asking you. I was only welcoming Ben.
Okay.
Okay. As Penn gets his thoughts organized and joining the conversation, so Chebukati is talking about the most recent elections. And in my previous discussion, I was actually developing from the first elections he held and the second elections, and now this was the third presidential election that he was holding. And he's saying that he's very proud and very contented of what he did. When, however, history is written, it will be written that he ran a very dysfunctional commission. But, however, dysfunctional it was the most peaceful elections Kenya has ever held since multi-party elections in 30 years. That is since 1992. We did not have post-election violence, not ever. We never had any killings that were really related to elections. I don't know if there were any, but we know that there were, of course, a little murders here and there, but not from the commission. But when history is written, he will be referred to as a man who single-handedly, dysfunctionally though, midwife the presidency of President William Ruto.
What do you mean he midwifed his presidency?
What I mean is, in the circumstances he was working in, because there was he had less than half of the commission that was supporting his decision to declare President William Ruto the president. So that's single-handedly, I would say, because it wasn't really a one voice. We expect, as the Supreme Court said, it shouldn't be a one-man show. He's supposed to be a chairman, and a chairman is not a chairman to himself. He's a chairman of a commission, and therefore it was a very dysfunctional commission. That actually, and that's what I mean by saying that he single-handedly midwifed the presidency of William Ruto.
Okay, Ben, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, Chebukati, I think he tried to do his job. He's a kind of a man with principles sometimes when you analyze him. But what's the problem that we have, as the Dr. is talking about? We have a problem of independence. The bodies that we have in Kenya, they are not independent. That's the biggest problem we have of corruption in Kenya. I still struggle to make decisions. You remember 2013? They can't be able to make their own decisions on how to run these elections. Okay. So they are torn into two. You see, 2017, if it's true what happened between these two parties, it is hard to make a right decision. But as Dr. is saying that as he goes home, the history will be written. What did you do as a person? To me, he did his best. If he was given the tools that he needs to be independent, this is a guy who could have done a good job.
So, Dr. Ndimo, I want to come back to you that he single-handedly, he had the people, and you listen to that clip where the one guy said that when you are choosing the next commissioners, don't choose political stooges who are there to serve interests. I think that's a good point. Now, I do agree. There were 4 commissioners who disowned the results, but really, according to the constitution, the returning officer, the national returning officer, is the chairman. So they were there together, verifying all the results. It only came at the end tail, and the other protested. Probably according to what they are talking there, maybe they were there serving other people's interests. What was he to do? Could have he, if he could have said what they wanted, probably it could have led to another violence. So, as a chairman, what could have you expected him to do when other four have decided to disown the result at the last minute?
You know, if I'll say this, and I'm not accusing him that he did the wrong thing. What I'm saying is he single-handedly stood for what he believed to be the truth, and there are very few people who can withstand that kind of pressure to midwife that. I'm telling you, the hardest job in Kenya that you can ever want, other than being president, is being chairman of the Electoral Commission. As I mentioned earlier on in my my opening remarks, people who go to run for political office are people with big egos.
Yeah.
They don't see how they can lose an election, yet there must be losers. So regardless, they are going to accuse you. You have to be a man of principle. You have to be a man who can withstand pressure to midwife any elections, regardless whether it's a constituency level or county level or even the presidency. Especially these last elections, I'm telling you, that man Chebukati.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about whether it was true or not, whether the elections were accurate or not. What I'm saying is he stood for what he believed to be the correct and true picture and reflection of the people who went to cast their ballots. Yeah. So the fact that he was able to withstand the pressure from a sitting president, the fact that he was able to withstand the pressure from all those people who wanted him to do what they wanted him to do, tells you that he's a man of principle. And I'm not saying when you're a man of principle, you are accurate or truthful or whatever. I'm saying he must be a man who is very principled, because, like I said, there's no harder job you can have in Kenya, and I would never seek that office, even if it's offered to me freely. It's a very stressful job to take. If I think I give him my accolades. I mean, I tip my hat for him. Whether he's going up or home with his head high, it's a very tough job.
Yeah. Look at what happened. Let us compare the apples to apples. Chebukati almost had the same situation Samuel Kiruitu had in 2007 election. And you see the decision he made when he didn't stand firm, Kenya banned. At this time, Chebukati stood firm and actually was acquitted by the High Court, which all the evidence was presented in the High Court, and it was found that it was a free and fair elections. So, as we agree, there are always two sides. If you don't win, you will have always to complain, and that is our nature. You know, we used to think it was only in Africa, but even we have seen it recently in the US. We have seen it in Brazil, which Brazil has always been a beacon of democracy elections. But you have seen that there are so many things coming in this situation now. And with that now that he has left office, if you are, Dr. Nimo, I thought you were going to apply to be a chairman, now you're being substituted. But what would you advise the people going to choose the next chairman? What kind of traits should they look at the next chairman of the Electoral Commission?
Maybe, if clearly the trait that Chebukati had is one of those that they look for, a person who stands firm in what you believe in. Whether you are right or wrong, it's good for people to know where you stand, because then you be prosecuted, or people will know exactly where you stand. However, in addition to what Chebukati exhibited in office as a man of principle, he's to be transparent, not at the end, but transparent throughout the process, so that you will not have people pointing an accusing finger at you, especially from your office, at the tail end of any process. So in this case, what we want to see the next chairman of IEBC do is not just being principled, it's also being transparent. was he to be transparent from the very beginning, to open those registers from the very beginning, to say what was going on from the very beginning, especially during those last days before he announced. That transparency, the fact that they were able to bring down and stop the streaming of the elections, really created doubt in some Kenyans and said, are you cooking something? You know, lack of information really makes people start thinking and plugging in and thinking their own things to fill in the void. So I believe that in the future, whoever is being chosen, they should be very transparent and principled and willing to die for the truth.
Yeah.
Ben.
I think, Dr. You have mentioned two things that I wanted to revisit. Kivuitu said that he didn't know who won. So what's the difference is here, Chebukati knows, in quotes, that who won the elections. So my advice for those who are coming in, I also concur with Daktari that he needs to be a principled person, and he has to make sure he fights for independence as a body. Yeah. And the other thing that brought a problem, you know, when they were getting those elections online, there was a problem that KTN was announcing different things from other media. So he thought that we have to stop it, because if KTN and the other media, they are producing a different number, so at the end of the day, we are going to have a chaos in Kenya. So he said, go check, everything is online. He handled it very calm. He was very very confident. And they announced the president. I think he saved the country. So those who are coming in, first thing, they have to make sure they connect very well from the other media and make sure they are very independent on the decisions that they're making. If the government can be able to support this, we will be having a very successful elections in Kenya.
Now, let us look at this. They were the first people to do election electronically. It was not manual. They started electronic, and you know, even if we would judge him in 2013, 2017, I think they have improved on the recommendation even from the Supreme Court. Let us not also forget the contribution of the Supreme Court. That all of the time they have gone to the Supreme Court, like in 2017, said election is supposed to be simple and verifiable. And actually, that's what they did. What we used to lack, verification of election. Like, everything was shrouded in mystery. This time, Chebukati told even the media houses, go to the portal, it's open. It's public, you get the results. All results, presidential results were in open portal, which I think was an improvement. And if we continue with that same improvement, don't you think this idea of election being stolen in Kenya will be the thing of the past?
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. And what we want to really not only appreciate is not only the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court would not be doing what they did unless the litigants who lost brought the case to the Supreme Court. So when history is written, really, the person who will have changed the electoral process in Kenya is the Awambo, the Raila Odinga, because these past elections, he took the case to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court was able to dissect the issues and give recommendations. Had he not gone there, then we couldn't be where we are at today. And I think you all know, you and I know, that history really we build our electoral process based upon the history and litigations and the rules that come out of it and the laws that are actually formed from the outcomes of those cases. So now in the future, what I believe should be done is not only just dumping all those electoral results into one portal. We should have a situation where, like my friend Penn mentioned, where all media houses really work hand in hand with the Electoral Commission to stream those elections in a sync, in such a way that they are actually all of them displaying the same results. If they are not necessarily the same, but same results. Because remember, some of them were displaying results from Mombasa, some from wherever, unverified results. But again, if you go to the portal today, we have only presidential results. We need to have the entire result electoral process really put in the electoral process. Today, if you ask me what my MCA won, how many votes, I don't know. So we're only focusing in one single office, yet the critical offices like the MCA office, like the member of parliament office, like the county governor's office results, they were not in the portal. I was scrambling to look for those. I couldn't find them. So the fact that they are only focusing on the office of the president and forgetting other critical offices is one recommendation I believe they should be focusing on and do exactly the same thing that they did for the president.
Good. Ben.
Yes, the question you can ask ourselves, are we doing better than yesterday or last year or 2013? Yes. Are we making progress? Definitely. But what we can do, we need more work to be done. As I said, corruption, independence of electoral commission is very, very crucial. That we have to give them powers to manage themselves and to make sure they train their people earlier. Like now they start the same year that we have elections. As they start, we have 47 counties, Dr. Ndimu. You know, one body to make sure that they have all the returning officers and to train them. This is hectic work. If they can start earlier, like 2 years, so that they can be able to make sure these personnel are well trained, the positions, the networks are working, and everything, so that you can be able to have these elected offices also be keyed in, so that you can be able to access them, as Mr. Ondim was talking about.
Yeah, but there was these many things which came up, which we never got answers about. The Venezuelans who were arrested on the airport with electoral material, we never got to know what really happened. And some of these things in the technology, some countries like India, with millions of voters, and Brazil, they are able to do it so quickly than in Kenya. So do we need to improve on is it maybe we are not well connected with the internet?
you know, it's mostly the people that you're dealing with than even the internet. Take an example of where we are sitting in Minnesota, for example. The people who run elections are run at the county level. They are the one who procure the materials. And by the way, the materials are printed within the county. The contracts are not going to overseas to print those ballot papers because they trust each other. But in Kenya, we cannot trust even the other person to print the papers. Yet we have printers in Kenya. Yet we have very highly trained people, technology guys. But we are going to Venezuela to get technology guys. Can you imagine? We are going to print our papers in Turkey. Can you imagine? We are sending all this foreign money that we so much earned, and we are sending it outside in millions and millions of dollars. Because when you are paying Venezuelans, when you are paying the Turkey people, you are paying them in dollars. So why can't we create this trust that we give the local people contracts to print our ballot papers? Why? So let's not point fingers at the Electoral Commission only. Let's point those fingers to ourselves and say, why can't we trust you to print those papers down the road? Why?
Exactly. That's yeah. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, Dr. Ondimu, I want to concur with you. You remember when you were hosting the Mukida, I asked Brooklyn Park to come and give us and tell us how they vote. You remember they brought the machine? The machine is very simple. You get the paper, you put inside, the number is up, and the name and the address and everything. If you are not there, they just spoil the ballot. So these things are very, very simple. If we can be able to start early, we start 6 months to elections. It's very hectic, as I've said. So if we will be able to start early and give them a chance to train, even what Mr. Odim is talking about, the ballots, we're going to be able to clean them in Kenya. The problem we have is corruption, and we don't trust one another.
You know, and that's one thing I would have to tell you, that election is a process. You know, here, personal responsibility is with the person who's conducting an election.
Yeah.
Not that people don't go to jail here. You see, they take election offense very serious here. Even here in the USA, you will be treated as an individual. What you did, you will go to jail for it. So every person who is, either you are just a poll judge, you are a head judge, you have that responsibility. And I think that is what we lack in Kenya. If we say we conduct the election, so we leave election materials to be procured in Nyanza, that is a strong note for Raila. So they will make presidential papers more, so that they will put for Raila. They will do the same. But if we can make our laws strong, that every decision you make as an official election, you will face the law.
Yeah.
Yes, and not only just not officials only, because we need even to hold voters accountable.
Yeah.
There are voters who go to vote twice, and the system must be in a such a way that they will know you. And once you are caught, the consequences, you will face the consequences. And I want to refer back to one case where this American voted in Florida, and apparently voted for the person who said people are voting twice. Then he voted again in Ohio. 2 years down the road, he was caught and he was put in jail. So the fact that we have electoral officials who are printing double papers and they're issuing them out, we should be able to know that those electoral papers, when somebody is voting, it should have a certain mark to say who really voted. If there are extra papers that were voted, we are able to trace that specific ballot to a single specific voter. So in other words, if we start holding ourselves accountable, then I believe our electoral process will be more transparent and more accurate.
Yeah.
And again, Dr. Mandi, the thing for technology is not coming in, because if the ATM in Marani or in Nyakongo or in Nyamira, you can be able to go and withdraw money from ATM. It's so easy for us to do it very well in elections if we wanted to.
Yeah. What recommendation would you give generally if you wanted the Electoral Commission to change? What you want to see? Some recommendation for it, so that the election to be more credible in the future. Ben, don't have any recommendation?
Yeah, I think we have talked about that. We said, first of all, what we would do, let's make sure these bodies are independent. And secondly, give them the funds to train them, the personnel, the employees. The third, we have to make sure we eliminate corruption. And we are given time, not 1 year or 6 months to elections. That's when we are scrambling who's printing the papers, who is doing what. This has to be starting early so that we know exactly 1 year before we are ready for elections. And then let's educate our people. Nowadays, media is everywhere. Let's educate our people that we have to be decent and we have to be accept that we have to elect our leaders.
Okay.
Genuinely, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. In addition to what my brother there, Penn, has mentioned, I think what is lacking and the biggest link that is actually the one that is making our electoral process a little bit difficult, and people are doing it and breaking those corruption offenses over and over again, is because we have never held anybody accountable for electoral offenses. We haven't done that. For example, the Supreme Court, even though they ruled and affirmed the presidency of William Ruto, they did point out some mistakes and errors that were committed. And remember back in 2017 when the Maraga Supreme Court said there were irregularities that were committed. Who was held responsible for that?
Yeah.
Had we held somebody responsible for it, had somebody paid the price, we will not be seeing what we are seeing today. So that is what actually is missing. So what is missing is for the country to start holding people accountable when they are found to have committed electoral offenses. If we hold those people accountable, I'm telling you, we will see less and less of those electoral offenses, and we'll see less and less of people pointing fingers that I did not win. That's what is lacking.
So recently this week, the Senate passed the Iebc amendment bill, where they said that how they are going to select the panel which is going to nominate the people who are going to be Iebc commissioners. And in that amendment bill, they say Parliamentary Service Commission will nominate 2 people to the panel, Interreligious Council 2 people, Public Service Commission 1 person, Political Parties Liaison Committee 1 person, and the Law Society of Kenya 1 person. Excellent. What can you say about that amendment bill? Is that fair? Anybody who wants to say about that amendment, that the panel which is going to select?
The outcome of, go ahead, Ben.
No, go ahead like that.
Go ahead.
I think it's well balanced because they want to have a section, a sector. We have a representative. You know, in Kenya, it's very interesting that Daktari, we don't have a problem of choosing the commissioners. We don't have a problem. Effectiveness, that's what we are lacking. The results, the end result. But choosing people, especially commissioners, perfect. And they will do their work. But I will want to make sure that we accept what they will give us or they do.
Okay.
You know, I agree to him to a certain extent that we don't have a problem with that. But history had it that we had a problem when choosing those people. Because remember, in the year 1992, when Moi single-handedly chose the entire electoral office, and then the opposition had to say, no, we have to be part of the people selecting those. And then they agreed each to select half and half. I have no problem with the religious group selecting people, for example. But in the most recent history, I have lost trust in the religious organizations in Kenya because they allow politics in their churches to an extent that I'm not sure if they will be able to really independently select people who will be independent in this case. So it's good to have people across the board select, but we also need to have these institutions that are going to select people to re-examine and look at their policies and how they behave, because perception is reality. Because the religious organizations has gone to bed with the political class. So you cannot differentiate our religious organizations from the political class. They have gone to bed. They don't defend even the weakest of the weak in the society. So I have a problem with the religious community, and I think it's good that you brought that up. I think it's good for us to be honest and tell them, hey, it's time for them to stand up and to do what God actually gave them the opportunity to do, to stand up for the weakest in the community and not be in bed with the strongest in the community. The strongest in this case, I mean, is the political class.
I think Dr. I agree with you, because Muge of the time is not there. Now they are waiting for them to be given some cars and the charges be built. They can't go against who is paying for what. So I think Dr. Onimu, that's very, very good statement you have said. All these religious, most of them, they have agreed with wherever who is helping them. So they are not principally standing firm for the truth. That let me die, but we get the truth here.
But don't you think it could have been good to have like a consulting firm like Price Water to interview and get competent people? Why do we have to nominate people with people who do not have the qualification? I mean, to look for competence of a person to head that.
And that's a good question. Maybe this is not a professional job. That's why those professional consultants firms are not are not being given the opportunity to do the selection. And true enough, they're interested parties when it comes to selection of our national leaders. And the sectors that were selected is really a good sector across the board. The only problem we have is when these institutions that are supposed to be doing their job really appear to be leaning towards one end. For the Royal Society of Kenya, for example, we expect them to bring professionals, because that's a professional organization that would bring in professionals who would be standing for what the law stands for. And for religious people, we expect them to be bringing people of God who will bring honesty to the process, who will stand up for the poor and the weakest. And for Parliament, we expect them to, to protect their interests, their politicians. So across the board, I agree with the organization. I don't have a problem with the broadness of how they are being set. The problem is the individual organizations to self-re-examine and see are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Otherwise, we will stop there. Thanks for your time. I hope we'll meet next time. So
thank you so very much.
Let's end it here today.
Thank you.